Just make sure this camera does not turn off. Huh?
Shamil is outside. Shamil is outside. I heard about it, but never got a chance to.
Service work. Huh? Service work. No, my was. It's still getting audio from somewhere. आप म्यूजिक प्ले कर सकता है यार यहाँ पे जो बात कर रहे हैं ना हमें वो सुनाई दे वही आपकी वही यहाँ पे हम दे कैमरे से आ रहे हैं वही बोल रहा हूँ, कोई इंटरनल कैंसर हुआ वैसे वो आपके कैमरे पे है हाँ माई हेडफोन्स टेकन ऑन हेडसेट यहाँ पे जो बात कर रहे हैं हमें वो सुनाई दे वही आपकी
Check.
अभी ऑन है
हाँ माइक चालू है Check 1 2
Huh? It's okay. Testing. Yeah. Check on. Testing. 1, 2. Hello, attention, please settle down. It begins in about 10 minutes. Okay. Right. Okay, then I think if I don't start speaking, everyone else won't stop. That's just generally how it happens, you know. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, and a very, very warm welcome to the Human Edge Longevity Summit. You know, staying together in a whirlwind of ways. Sometimes it's conversations, sometimes it's emails. Can you please settle down and clap? Thank you. I'm a very cognitive person, so if I hear noise, my brain doesn't, it shuts down. You know, actually everyone's does. That's a beautiful thing that you learn today, is what makes the brain work, what makes the body work, and how to really and truly optimize it. My name is Sharma Vogji. I'm a sports scientist and a clinical psychologist. I work with professional athletes. I'll tell you a little bit about my work. When I came around, I was meeting a few interesting people, and a few people said, "Hey, we saw you speak here, and we saw you host this event." And one person said it was a tech event, one said it was a healthcare event, one person said, I don't know the host of events. The one common thing is why you're finding me at all these events is when they have no budget for a host, they throw me on stage. Okay, so that's why you find me in all these places. Now, as a clinical psychologist, I generally like to get to know the audience, because one thing we want to do is we want to filter or tailor our information to the people we. Now, childhood trauma, everything that's happened, but that's a really dark way of getting to know you. Okay, so I'm going to try something else. I want all of us to do a little exercise. No squats, nothing. Just going to do a little thought exercise so that I get to know who you are. So everyone put your hands up. Amazing. Okay, squeeze your hands together. Squeeze your thumbs together. I want you to look at your thumbs. Okay, now I want you to notice if your left thumb is crossed over your right or your right thumb is crossed over your left. Okay, have you got it? Are you looking at it? Perfect. So whose right thumb is crossed over the left? Put your hands up. Okay. About 50% of the room. So if your right thumb is crossed over your left, you are statistically in the top 50% of the most beautiful people on earth. Yeah. And if your and if your left thumb is crossed over your right, then you're statistically in the top 50% the most intelligent people on earth. Ah, okay. So I'll leave it up to you to decide on whether you were lucky or not. Okay. So I'm a sports scientist. I work with professional athletes. There's some amazing people in the room who spend a lot of time working with professional athletes. And there's a beautiful thing about Olympic athletes. This is what people don't know, that statistically, the 10 or 12 people that will line up at an Olympic final in any single event are genetically closer to each other than you are to a sibling. Right? Most people don't know that. Exactly. Right? And the difference between the gold medal and position 4 is generally 0.5%. And that 0.5% could be 1/100th of a second, or it could be 3 minutes or 2 minutes in a marathon event, or in the case of India's first individual gold medalist, Abhinav Bindra, the difference between 1 and 4 was so small that it cannot be seen by the naked eye from 3 meters away from the target. That's what 0.5% means. Now, that 0.5% is very interesting because it's the difference between the world knowing who you are and no one knowing who you are. Okay, so let's try something before we get into longevity. Sports is very, very exciting, so I love talking about it all the time. Okay, so I want you to think of Olympic winners, but let's leave India out of it, because Indian Olympic winners are always in the media. We hear about these names, right? Give me some names of Olympic winners. Carl Lewis, Usain Bolt,
Michael Phelps, Mary Kom, correct? Okay, and then, so there are more than 15,000 people that have won medals at the Olympic Games. And every single time I ask this question, I get the exact same names. So what's common between all of these names you gave me, whether it's Mary Kom in India, or Usain Bolt, or Michael Phelps, or Carl Lewis? What's common amongst all of them? Well, the thing that's common is that they are multiple winners. They have won over a decade. Okay? And the only way to win over a decade is when your body becomes your temple. And the one thing that's common with every single one of them is that they treat their body like a temple. Right? Every bit of science pours in towards helping them move forward. Yeah. So today you're going to hear from some beautiful experts. Some have flown in from corners of the world, South Africa, Malaysia. We've brought in from all over India. And there's some really remarkable people in this room, including you guys as well. Okay. But we're here for the Human Edge Longevity Summit. Human Edge's vision is to really raise the collective health of the workforce by simplifying data and knowledge and making it actionable for you. That's just a very basic, rudimentary example. How many people in the room have a wearable device? You track something. Yeah? Okay. How often do you actually understand what that data means? Do you understand what you're seeing on a day-to-day basis? Yes? You understand? You understand the numbers and what that means? So if something says, hey, my core body temperature has gone up by 0.4 degrees, do you know what that means? If your heart rate variability is 67 today and it drops to 34 tomorrow, do you know what that means? Anyone? Yeah? Yeah, few people, one person understands. Good. Good. So this is the core problem we found with most people who have wearable devices, is that they don't understand that data that's coming in. And that's what Human Edge is trying to solve, because we understand that the average person in the workforce needs to focus on a particular job, right? And being able to interpret this data is very, very low on their priority list. And when it becomes high on their priority list, unfortunately, we don't have the energy or the cognitive stimulation to motivate ourselves to bring change. So what we're trying to do is bring in an intervention early enough so that we don't get to that point. That is where Human Edge is focusing. And we've had a really, really remarkable year. We've done more than 53,000 assessments. We have worked with more than 54 multinational companies present in, I think, 14 countries. We've disseminated something called a biohack. Does anyone know what a biohack is? You've heard that term? Yeah, you'll learn more about it. A biohack soon. We've given out more than 100,000 of these biohacks to just shift this data in some shape and form. And the sum total of all of this is that improving your health is now fun and enjoyable. That's what we're looking to try to do. So the first person I want to welcome on stage is someone who is very close, very dear friend, a remarkable individual. He's served as a medical officer with the Royal Air Force. He's been on the NASA Kennedy Space Center. Okay, he even holds a Guinness record. Can you believe that? How many people in the room have a Guinness record? Anyone holds a Guinness record? He's the only one in the room? Yeah, there's only one person in the room who has it, and he has it. Can you guess what you think it would be for? Anyone? Okay. Run, longest walk, longest run. Yeah, all of those were done, so he hacked it. He owns the Guinness record for running backwards, right? Yeah, exactly, which is harder than you actually think it is. Okay, but I'm truly delighted to welcome on stage the founder of Human Edge and the person who put this all together, Dr. Marcus Rani.
How are we feeling? This is awesome. I tell you, it's awesome for us to be here at this point in juncture in our company's history, and it's just so awesome to have so many friends, colleagues, and known warm faces in the room as well. So thank you for giving up a Saturday morning, relatively early, to be here with us, and I hope we can pay back that investment with some interesting learnings and experience of today as well. If I could start by sharing my frustration As a physician, health is sick. It's sick because for far too long, our global system has been too focused on disease. It's sick because for far too long, our energies and efforts have been targeted towards the mitigation of pathogenesis and helping on the disease front. In fact, that's how we define health, the absence of disease, until a few years ago. And it's sick because whilst we are dying later on, we're getting sicker earlier. Every major chronic disease, whether it's physical or mental, the incidence, prevalence, and severity is going up the world over. We haven't fixed it from a financial perspective either. Most countries around the world in the next 4 decades will not be able to afford healthcare the way it's being practiced and financed today. In America, the world's richest country, millions of people still can't afford basic medications to help manage their disease. In our country, unfortunately, almost 30 million people every year are pushed below the poverty line because they can't pay for the cost of their surgeries and basic medications as well. Millions of people are uninsured, yet we are living in a world where technology is so pervasive. Every second, each of you here right now, and some of the folks who are hopefully signed in online, is generating 2 megabytes of data every second. Where is that data going? It's suggesting things we probably shouldn't watch, foods we definitely shouldn't eat, and perhaps people we shouldn't date. None of that data is actually really serving the human experience in any way. And technology that exists right now, from the wearables to the applications, feel cold, they feel distant, and they're not solving for the practicality of the intelligence. What do I do with this information? How can it help me be a better person? So we thought about how can we solve that at Human Edge. As a scientist, I like to think in terms of equations, and this was the equation that we thought of creating. Can I have the next slide, please? I'm not sure this. It's wonderful, huh? Technology. It's B multiplied by T plus E. Biology immersed in technology plus human experiences can lead to better accessibility, affordability, and ultimately the human edge methodology of uplifting health around the world. Because we are biological beings, but we're immersed in technology. But technology is meaningless if it lacks empathy, if it lacks the experience of what human centricity has designed for itself. And that's our objective of creating products and technology which, supplemented with quality human experiences, can uplift the human health around the world. So when we define health, we have 5 key pillars. And this is really important because the framework for this morning is covering these various 5 pillars. These 5 pillars are interconnected. They exist in a paradigm that allows each of us to unlock our health and performance. And we like to start with sleep and recovery. We then move to how we can fuel our body. And you'll hear some of that today, from macronutrients and micronutrients, the microbiome, supplementation, caffeination, hydration, etc. We're then going to hear about the beautiful piece of movement. Not exercise, but movement in all of its various forms. Aerobic and anaerobic, strength, flexibility, coordination, and balance. Then we look at the environment, because we are the sum of the environment which is around us. Environment are the people, the places, and the technologies that we're immersed in. It's an extension of our biosphere. It affects us equally as we affect it. And then, of course, importantly, our mood and emotion. Whether it's gratitude, empathy, compassion, joy, legacy, purpose, mental well-being, these are all important quality traits that keep and define our health and performance as well. And so as we think through the 5 pillars, a word that you'll probably hear the most of today is biohacks. Biohacks are small and simple. They are lifestyle interventions which are designed, scientifically validated, and deeply based in physiology and psychology to help uplift human health and performance. It exists in the coaching work that we do, and it's the hero of the digital experiences that we're building and that we'll be launching later today as well. So thank you very much for the investment of your time to be here. I hope today is fun, it's educational, and most of all, it helps leave you with some biohacks that can improve your health, longevity, and performance as well. Thank you very much, Shaman. Thank you.
Much, Marcus. You know, I was standing there, I was just thinking about, I don't know what made me randomly think about Chat GPT. Like literally, like 10 seconds ago. So how many of you have used it, by the way? Ah, interesting. Chat GPT. What do you think? You like AI? I was at a conference recently where someone asked an interesting question. Would you like an AI caregiver to look after your elderly parents? Hands up if you would allow that. Hands up if you would allow an AI to play with your kids, 4 years old, 4, 5, 6. Hands up. You would? All right. Amazing. Okay. This was an interesting one. How many of you would like to work for an AI? AI is your boss. Hands up. Interesting. So I chaired a discussion where we're talking about what is the future of AI and how. And you know what was really fascinating about AI as a boss is that when I asked this question in the audience, 80% of people thought that's a great idea. You know, because the AI will be very, very diligent with how it interprets everything. But 80% of them thought it was a good idea, but all of them thought, not for me. So that was really, really fascinating. Let me ask a question. How many of you have had a blood test done in the last 6 months? Hands up. All right, great. How many people take supplements every day? Okay. And the supplements are based on blood tests? Something went right or wrong there and you decide to correct there? Very, very good. Very interesting. So our next speaker is someone very, very interesting. He's the professor at the Chemical Engineering Department at IIT Bombay. He's a co-founder of a company called Clarity Bioscience that analyzes 500 blood pathology markers and does early diagnosis of diseases. And he's published more than 110 papers on metabolomics and bioprocesses and engineering. He's someone who's really, really fascinating. So, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Professor Pramod Wangekar.
Good morning. So, we're going to talk about mitochondria and testing. So we have all heard of liver function test, kidney function test, but I don't know if you have heard of a mitochondrial test. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the future of this kind of testing that is getting developed in the research that we are doing at IIT Bombay. Thank you, Shamal, for the introduction. Thank you, Marcus, for the opportunity here. My name is Pramod Wangekar. I'm a professor at IIT Bombay. Marcus has given me a 10-minute slot, but I forgot to mention that we are used to speaking for 55 minutes in the class. So, and thank you for being here. So, I don't want to make it a completely science talk, but there is going to be a little bit of science. And there's going to be, I'm trying to combine this with some fun facts. So if we, think of where we come from, I mean, how we have evolved and over the years and millions of years. And it all goes back to this, this beautiful book that came out in 1871. And it was titled The Descent of Man as opposed to The Ascent of Man. So we haven't ascended on earth, we have descended from our ancestors. And this descent has happened over years, over not 1,000 years, not hundreds of thousands of years, but millions of years. And all this is based on how we have evolved today, where we are, as is based on natural selection, survival of the best qualities, and adaptation. The evolution from the beginning of the earth, it has been 3.54 billion years. And we are obviously not the first ones who evolved. It is the bacteria that evolved first. And we over here the humans, our history is less than 1,000,000 years. In fact, our history, the way we look today, is less than 200,000 years. And all of this has been based on the survival of the fittest. This also tells you the evolutionary time scales. So it has taken us a really long time to evolve the way we are. And now we are trying to change that really rapidly. And that doesn't give us enough time to evolve the kind of things, to evolve, to be fit for the kind of things that, that we want to do today. So going back 150,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, we were literally hunter-gatherers. And this is the term that is used in the book Sapiens. Moving from place to place, no permanent place to live, hunting, gathering the forest fruits and so on. And then roughly 10 or 12,000 years ago came the civilizations, started agriculture, became a little bit more efficient in all of this. And we are talking from this point onward. So that's sort of, the agricultural movement became more stable. And then roughly 300, 400 years ago came the Industrial Revolution. And I show you some other graphs where all of these are very, very clear. And that's where we are today. We are basically, so we were used to running around to hunt, to survive, to doing agriculture, which is really hard physical work. And then industrial work, which is still hard work. It is, if you have, any of you have visited a plant, a chemical plant or a factory, it's still a lot of work. And now we are here in the present where there is absolutely no physical activity. The mitochondria that has evolved to do so much of work is doing literally nothing. And of course, that is what will potentially lead to problems. So what is our potential? We were running around, we were running for 30, 40 miles a day potentially. Can we still do that today? Obviously, yes, we can. We have not lost that potential. And you can see that in the marathon. So the picture is shown of the latest marathon champion, the Olympic champion, Eliud Kipchoge, who has won 2 golds. And what is he doing? He's running at the speed of 21, 22 kilometers per hour, literally for 2 hours. And that is the kind of smile that you see even at the end of 2 hours. So if we were to run for 5 kilometers or 10 kilometers, we won't be as happy. Now, going to the marathon speeds, the way they have evolved, if you look at 1900, so I'm just, these are some fun facts and a little bit of science in it. So we have evolved for so many years, but what are we doing now? We are trying to use science to evolve it further, to sort of optimize our systems even better. This data is from 1980. I apologize if you can't read the numbers, but the y-axis is the speed of the marathoner and the x-axis is the year. And the data is from 1980 to present. And if you look at the data from 1900 to present, the top marathoner would take roughly 3 hours to run the marathon. The distance hasn't changed, 42 kilometers. 3 hours to today, it's roughly 2 hours. Have we evolved in 100 years? No chance. There is not enough time to evolve for the humans to evolve or for the selection to happen. The selection hasn't happened. It is the science that has evolved. So we are trying to, of course, train better and perform better. It's not just the top line is the winner, the topper. And of course, you talk about the JE and all that. So there's not much difference between the topper and the second. The top line is the topper, the next line is the top 10, the top 20, and so on. So it's not just one individual who is improving, it's the top 40. So there are many individuals who can potentially do that. And that means there are probably even many more who can do the exactly same job, exactly the same. So that's the epitome of human potential. And that's where I'm very happy that we are here for this, the summit that Human Edge has organized can we, and I talk quite a bit with Doc, with Marcus, can we push our limits? Can we push the human limits? The edge, what is our edge? Is it too fast, running too much? Is it too cold, going to cold environments, going to lesser oxygen? What is it? What is the limit? What can we survive? And that is the, and it's the training that's going to help, and it's the science that is going to help. So mitochondria is the little organelle inside our cell. It's really tiny. It's inside the cell. It is not the cell itself. They're tiny. There can be many mitochondria per cell, literally thousands per, let's say, in a heart cell. And that's why they called as mitochondria. And the name that the app has is really apt. It's mito, which comes from mitochondria, the energy house, the source, the store. How do mitochondria work? That's the main site for generation of energy inside. They burn carbs, fats, and proteins. And obviously, if you load your mitochondria with all of the above, there's going to be traffic jam. There's going to be too much of overload. Each heart muscle can have between 5,000 to 10,000 mitochondria. And the important part is that the function can decline with age. And that's where we are today. Again, another interesting fun fact, x-axis is year, starting from 1770. Y-axis is the average life expectancy at birth. We were living 20, 30 years. And now, how much are we living? I'm getting old. How many times we hear that? We are all getting old. The human population is getting older. And where we have sort of figured out how to escape infections and other diseases, we haven't really figured out how to escape that main disease, which is age, right? And this came to the fore in the COVID times, when we would hear, what is the risk factor? What is the top risk factor for COVID? And it is the age. And what is the top risk factor for cancer? It is the age. And what is the top risk factor for any other disease? It's literally the age. And that is obviously the reason why it is more and more difficult to get health insurance as you get older and older, because it's just a risk factor for almost everything. So the mitochondrial dysfunction can lead to overload, your insulin resistance, cardiovascular diseases, so on. And what we are now developing is a test that will test your mitochondrial function just from a drop of blood. And that's the science that is shown here. I don't want to bore you with the science. It's more science. This is work in progress. A little experimental data that is shown for pre-exercise versus post-exercise. Your blood parameters change dramatically. And how they change can tell you how fit you are, what you need to do and how can you fuel yourself better. Is it going to be carbs or proteins or fats, or are there any blocks in the pathway? There are many non-pharmaceutical interventions that you can, and there are going to be other speakers who will talk about it. But exercise is the obvious thing. But how you fuel yourself, you could, go for fasting periods help. And most importantly, sleep is there are certain recovery processes that can happen only during sleep. There's no other way you can, have those. So thank you for, and sorry for running a little bit over. Let me thank Tanya for the excellent help with the slide deck that I have today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Pramod. He said so many things that are such beautiful gems. Exercise is medicine is the one thing. I remember that's a movement in the world that's been growing for a very, very long time. How many people move every single day? Minimum at least 10 minutes? Yeah? Okay, good. That's fascinating. Also love the story of Eliud Kipchoge. I happened to spend almost 6 years going in and out of Kenya working with these guys. And there's a beautiful philosophy in Kenya. Eton, which is the village where they train, Elliot lives just outside of it, but Eton is in the Guinness Book of Records for having the largest concentration of talent per capita. In 2013, 94 of the top 100 fastest marathon runners were residents of that village. And they no more than 20,000 residents in that village. They have zero infrastructure. There's no hotel that's even a 2-star hotel. The roads are not even tarred. There's no street lights. They don't have access to a massive supermarket. They produce the best runners. There's not even a running track around there. I think there was one that came up, but no one ran on it because they didn't know how to run on a tartan track, so they left it out. There's no swimming pool. There's absolutely nothing, but yet they produce 94% of the world's fastest marathon runners. And all of the world's marathon runners descend there and they train there. So it's really, really one of the most fascinating places. And they have a beautiful philosophy. The philosophy is good people make people great, right? So the thing I love about Kenya and about Eton is that every single runner has a responsibility to find the talent and bring them to Eton, because they realize that when you put good people together in a single place, they push everyone forward. And John, who's with Rajasthan Royals, one of our friends, advisors, and colleagues at Human Edge, would tell you, in sport, we say the strength of a team is directly proportional to the strength of the reserve bench. The stronger the reserve bench is, the more the team will perform. All right. So very interesting. I'll keep coming up, and every time someone says something, it triggers off a memory, and then I have to talk about it. Our next speaker is someone who's very fascinating. She's done 20 years of work in personal development. And this is the irony of longevity, is we do all of this work to look younger and to feel better, and then some host comes here and says how much of experience you have, and that just gives away some of our age. I was thinking about that like literally 10 seconds ago. I'm saying there's got to be a hack around that. But anyway, she has 20 years of experience in personal development, personal growth. Okay. She works on trauma-informed holistic coaching. Okay, so someone who's really connecting your whole body to the self. And she's going to be talking about something really, really interesting. She's going to be talking about the future of corporate culture is community and community building. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Lilia Sabatier.
Hi, good morning. Still morning. So essentially, thank you, Shamal, for the introduction. My main area of focus is connection, and a lot of that connection happens through community. And if you look at the 5 pillars that Marcus was talking about in his part, you had environment and emotion. So this talk would be more in that section of those 5 pillars. So when we talk about corporate culture as community healing, like, first of all, what do I mean by corporate culture, right? Corporate culture is not an intellectual process. It's essentially how your people feel on Sunday night when they're thinking about going to work on Monday. So are they like, oh gosh, they have that like pit in their stomach, or are they really super excited to see their colleagues, to do the work and be in the environment because they love going to work, right? So I'd be interested. So what I was saying about feeling, right? It's very subjective. It's something that we feel individually, and it's very influenced by the environment that we're in. So is the environment fostering feelings of well-being or not? So I would like to know, with a show of hands, yes, how many of you here present truly know how your employees feel about coming to work on a Monday morning? Okay, so 2 out of the people that are here, right? So this just goes to show where we are in terms of our corporate culture and how much of empathy and care and the emotional aspect is still lacking in many of those spaces. So do any of you know what these numbers represent? Anyone want to take a wild guess? No, not you, Mimi. You ruined it. Yeah? Sorry? So we're there. So basically, on average, humans spend 90,000 hours at work in their lifetime. right? So that's about, if we calculate 2 weeks, and I'm not a mathematician, so it's about 536 weeks of our life that go into just work, right? If we're lucky, and hopefully thanks to human edge and all the work that's happening in longevity, if we're lucky, we get to live 4,000 weeks, right? So that's like best case scenario, we have 4,000 weeks on Earth. So as of now, corporate culture, the way it is a bit maladaptive and it's antiquated. What I mean by that is that when we go into the workspace today, there is this antiquated expectation that I should leave my personal life at home. So I walk into the door and all of a sudden I'm this robot or this production machine or this management machine. I'm no longer a human. What has happened before, if I fought with my husband or my kids were sick, none of that matters because now I've magically transformed now that I've crossed the door, right? So, and that leads to a lot of stress. And now, post-pandemic, a lot of corporates that I work with in the coaching space are having trouble justifying to their employees why they should come back to work, because people know they can work from home now, whereas before it was a bit different. So companies are struggling to tell their employees why they should come to work. And when I ask them, they don't have an answer to give me either, right? So that just shows you the complexity of corporate culture, because if you have a really strong corporate culture, then people belong and people want to be there and they feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. So right now, corporate culture and work in general is, one of the leading causes of stress in the world. Like, we spend most of our time there. And as Marcus was saying, we are highly impacted by our environment, right? Which would mean that we need a healthy environment in order to thrive. And our corporate cultures can become that environment since we spend so much time there. So as leaders, as people in decision-making capacity, you have that opportunity. You really have an opportunity to decide what kind of corporate culture you want to have and what legacy do you want to leave for your people, and more than the people that just come to the office, the communities that they live and thrive in. So how can we as companies foster well-being? How can corporate culture become a tool for community healing and community development? So there are 6 key principles of a healthy corporate culture. If you have all 6 of these, you're doing awesome. Most corporate cultures have maybe 1, 2, none have 6 at the moment. So first is safety. Do your employees feel emotionally, mentally, physically safe without a shadow of a doubt when they come to work? 2, trustworthiness and transparency. Are we really having all the conversations? Are all the topics on the table, or are there things that are taboo and we don't discuss? 3, peer support. How are your teams working together? Do they feel like they have a really strong network of support? Number 4 is collaboration and mutuality. So what's the power dynamic in the company? Can we level it, right? Is hierarchy really strong or not? Then we have something that is empowerment, voice, and choice. So this is really about, are you empowering your people to be who they are? Are you giving them the opportunity to express who they are and to choose how they show up in the workspace? And the last one, which is, one of the tricky points in India, is cultural, historical, and gender issues, right? Is your company promoting stereotypes that are harmful, or is the culture inclusive and diverse, representing the multiplicity of humans that are on the planet? And I'll just finish by saying that if you apply these 6 key principles, then you foster a space of well-being, and your corporate culture becomes a space where community can be built. Because in well-being, we have the word be. So the corporate culture needs to allow individuals to be who they are, so they can bring their genius to the collective. And that also increases individual productivity and focus. It also increases retention and loyalty, which means that everyone wins, because then the company is able to achieve its goals. So healthy corporate culture is also really good for business. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks, Donna.
Yeah. Had so much to tell you and it just slipped my mind. With really interesting stuff, actually. How many of you have watched the movie Infinity Games? What's it? It's Infinity Game? Infinity Games. How many of you watched that? Anyone watch that movie? One person at the back. So What's interesting is a lot of people here work in sport, but we are talking to people who are in the business world. And that term, Infinity Games, that movie, came from something really, really interesting. That term, Infinity Games, came from the difference between sport and business. See, sport, for those of us who work, is hard because we are pushing the extremities of performance and we're trying to crunch a lot of science into it. But it's also very, very easy because the rules are fixed. The playing time, the duration, when you start, everything is fixed. It's a fixed board. We know what to do. All the variables are there. Yes, the variables may change a little bit inside of that, but it's fixed. Infinity Games is a game that you are playing. You know, in business, there are no rules. You don't know where your threat is. You don't know when people are coming. People can do anything to get an advantage. And the gambit is really, really wide. Now, the thing that obviously loves sport because it's a pure meritocracy. The thing I dislike about sport is that only one person can win. When we start, at the end, we need a winner. We need someone to get to the top. The beautiful thing about business is that 1 + 1 can equal to 5 through the power of collaboration. It's probably one of the only things in the world where two companies can come together who are probably competitors, but can find a way that both people mutualistically benefit from each other. And that's probably the most beautiful thing about business that I absolutely love. Okay. And that's why playing an infinity game is so exceptionally powerful. Okay. We're going to hear a lot over the next 20 minutes from a few speakers talking about leadership and talking about empathy. And it's a really, really big and powerful word that everyone's talking about. The next speaker that I'm going to call about is someone who specializes in movement. Okay. She's the founder of a company called Kinetic Living. She spent, I'm not going to tell you how long she's been doing this because I don't want to give away people's age. But she's been featured in magazines like Elle, Vogue, Gracia. She powers women empowerment through the movement campaign. She's a brand ambassador with Nike and with Apple in India, just taking that whole movement agenda forward. And today she's going to talk to you about the relationship between glucose variability and movement, something that's fundamentally important. Just out of interest, how many people have ever used a CGM device that tracks glucose? Few people. How many people never heard of that? Never heard of the word CGM? Something that continuously monitors your blood glucose. Okay. Well, you're in for a treat. Please join me in welcoming Urmi Kotari.
Hey guys, first of all, a very good morning. And I want to start the talk by just asking a few questions and see whether you agree with me or disagree. How many of you would agree when I say energy is the new currency today? Okay, that's awesome. How many of you all agree that sitting is the new smoking? Does anyone know why? Of course, yes. But there's a scientist and a craniosacral therapist called Stanley Rosenberg who said that if you have a forward head posture, your life average expectancy is worse than someone who's smoking a packet a day. Do you believe that? How many of you will believe it? Yes, you better believe it because it is true. And that's what I want to talk about is that when we talk about fitness, there are a lot of intimidated people in the house. You may see my biceps, you may see my shoulders and be like, I can't work out like you to have the benefits of fitness. But when I talk about movement, we are made to move. You move from your house to here, right? Are we all doing push-ups right now? No. But we are going to do some movement right now, which I can guarantee you will probably help you improve your blood sugar if you would have had poha or all the bread in the breakfast right now. How many of you all are feeling a little sleepy right now? No one's going to admit it. But how many of you all are able to focus right now? How many of you all are actually here physically, mentally in the room? Thank you. That's awesome. Maybe it's because I'm wearing red. But The question is, so let's do a little bit of an exercise, okay? Just try to see if you can put your tailbone slightly to the back of the chair so you're not slouching, right? The forward head posture, remember that? And I can, yeah, anyway. So let's roll our shoulders slightly, lift your shoulders up, shrug a little bit, which we all do unconsciously on our laptops, and then roll your shoulders down, breathe out. Again, let's try that again. Inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth. Let's try one more time, okay? Inhale and exhale as you drop those shoulders down. Now gently, slightly tuck your chin in so you feel the length of your back really elongate, right? And what did I just do right now? I just brought your spine in a better position. I brought you into the room by cracking a few jokes, right? But I also really connected with you and helped you connect with your body for a bit. And why am I talking that in a talk about science and glucose variability? How many of you all know what's glucose variability? Okay, so let me just explain that to you in a very simple layman terms. It's the variability or how much your blood glucose is varying in the day, for example. And of course, in the day, so in your lifetime. And why is it important? Can anyone tell me, apart from the speakers and the scientists here, why is maintaining a good glucose variability important? Yeah? Insulin, no, that's yes, but why is it important? Why is it helping you in your daily life? Why are CEOs talking about it? Why are we talking about it? So what I'm saying is everyone wants a sustainable source of energy, right? How many of you all would say you want bouts of intense energy and then lethargy? Do you want that? No. How many of you all want sustained energy throughout the day? Right? But what does it help us do? At work, it helps us focus better. In health, it helps you to reduce your cravings. And if at all you're trying to go into creative, I would say recreational athletics, which is running a marathon, playing badminton, all of that's going to help you with sustained energy. It's going to help you sleep better. And the other pillars, there are other experts going to talk about it. But today I'm going to talk about, like I said, what is movement? This is not the presentation. Anyway, I'll just keep talking, just change the presentation. And last question I want to ask you is stress good? How many of you all would agree, is stress good? Yes, stress is good. In what sense? When stress is actually in healthy amounts, which is movement or fitness, we are actually building our resilience. And you can't cut stress out of your life. So if you can improve your resilience through movement, that's what is going to help you. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about, like I said, the glucose variability. So we did a little breathing right now. We did a little movement. And I'm going to do one more thing, which is, let's stand up for a second. No, let's sit down. Let's stand up again. Can we sit? Can we stand? Stand. Stand. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Sit down. So I just did, and in different movements, what we do is through my command, you reacted. And what I essentially did is activated your central nervous system. So that's your mind-muscle connection. And trust me, you don't need to go to a gym to move, right? You move out in the sun, you moved as well. And you like a lot of dopamine, lot of serotonin, all of that. Moving ahead. So my name is Urmi. Kinetic Living is my company. It's my purpose in life. And also Shala. Okay, going. Is gone. Oh, yes, sorry. Thank you. Okay, so I just want to talk a little bit about glucose variability, right? We are often told, okay, maintain a calorie deficit, you will lose weight. But in the effort of keeping our calories down, we sometimes choose foods that are high in sugar, but low in a sustained energy supply. So if you see, a banana has more calories than a candy, but which one has more sustained amount of energy? Right? Banana is known as an athlete's food. It reduces cramps and so much more than just give us energy. Second one, so on and so forth. If you see that if it doesn't, let's stop measuring food with calories and instead look at how it affects glucose variability. Because if you have better glucose variability, like I said, you have better sustained energy. And this is where I think most corporates and most people working in corporates are getting fitness or movement incorrectly, is that we think we need to work out, maybe let's say more than what we are told to do, because we think that that's what is going to get us our best results. But actually, optimum efforts are much better as we move forward, and that helps us to maintain consistency. So what are the benefits of what do you mean by optimum? Can we combine different forms of training or movement to actually give us the key benefits rather than do the same form of training like running every day? Instead of that, what if we do weight training twice a week? And weight training, when I say not just going to the gym, any form of resistance training, that is going to improve your BMR at rest. So BMR is your resting, what calories you're burning right now when you're sitting here. Same way, increased bone density, better fat burn, because you're eating the foods that also don't spike your blood sugar. So along with getting better focus, you're also stoking your metabolism. And comes to the most eternal question, how many of you all feel you don't have the time to exercise or to do any form of movement? It's okay, you can raise your hand. So the purpose is, what is human edge? And in terms of my specialty, movement, what we are trying to do is, basis the data that we get about you personalized, we are going to recommend certain movement basis, some biohacks that will help you stay in the time frame. And instead of worrying about how much long you have to work out, we give you simple hacks to help you actually improve your glucose variability. So what you're doing psychologically is also reducing your barrier to move, but also physiologically you're priming yourself for better performance and longevity, both. So I'm not going to bore you with the data right now that you can read, but what I want to really get at, like I said, sitting is the new smoking, and I gave you the fact. Posture is the slow poison, like I said, the same thing. And why sitting is the new smoking is also because it's better. Research has shown that it's better to stay active throughout the day rather than do 1 hour of intense activity in the beginning or somewhere in the day and then spend the rest of the day on a couch or at a desk. So again, just simple things like getting out, going for a walk, things like that. But what is essentially important for you or for your employees personally, that's what Mito is going to do as well. So personalization is also really important to know, because I could be like, hey, I did this and you should try it. But maybe Mito says, no, that's not for you. And chronic fatigue, brain fog, that's what I meant by about the focus part. So when we are eating foods that are spiking our blood sugar, we're getting energy crashes. And that's what causes confusion, lack of clarity, all of that. And yeah, I mean, we all know the benefits of movement in general. We don't need to go further into that. And like I said about the basal metabolic, so what we basal metabolic rate, which is the resting calorie burn, get more out of less time. So that's what I'm trying to say, optimum efforts. And I just said that about doing some form of resistance training. What do you need? What does your body fat say about your current physiology that we can help you to get better? Oh, sorry. So in movement, how do we improve glucose variability? There are 3 pillars. I'm doing the movement, but that's why all the pillars are interlinked with each other. Sleep is one of the best fat loss pills. Movement, yes, and like I said, we are going to look at nutrition separately anyway, so I'm not going to go into that. And how many of you all agree to this? You can't out-exercise a bad diet. And again, why? Can anyone tell me why? Were you here or no? I was just talking about it. So basically, if you're eating foods that are high GI, which is basically going to spike, crash, you're not going to feel energetic, right? And that's why you're not also going to be able to show up for your exercise in a much more energetic way. That is just one. Another thing is stress. Or when I talk about stress, not just mental stress, but also internally, your body is going through something called as oxidative stress. And just now, everyone's spoken about aging, right? aging is one of the biggest causes of aging is anti-activity and inflammation. So that's what causes, because that's what happens when you eat junk food or high carb foods where you're spiking your blood sugar, a lot of inflammation in the body. So without you knowing, your body is aging as well. And just want to share one or two anecdotes from my life. Is success is substantial when it's slow and deep. So that's why we are connecting all the pillars from work culture, emotion, environment. All of that will help you actually move better in the long run, because you're able to show up and show up fully. Tackling the root instead of the symptoms, like I said, not just popping a pill and trying to just run just for because your medical report said it, but because you know how it helps you and your employees show up better and perform better. And be happy, right? Exercise, movement is in releasing endorphin, serotonin, and happier people make better workforce. Monitoring the sugar levels after movement. So I'm wearing the CGM patch, and a lot of you already who have worn it also know that after eating, if you're just going to walk for about say 5 to 10 minutes, your blood sugar is going to stabilize. So there are simple hacks that you can do, like I said. Fueling right before workout. So a lot of people are working out under fueled, and that also causes energy crashes. That leads them to make poor choices at work about food, about not being able to focus, and a lot of other things, which that's what Mito is going to do. But that's what I mean, that the CGM patch can also help you understand your glucose variability so you can fuel better. Does that make sense? So for some of you right now, you may not be able to focus because you are getting a crash. Some of you might be feeling too jittery because it's very high. So what is it for you? That's what this does. And lastly, before I end, I just want to tell you 3 things which will probably motivate you further to know about glucose variability and how movement helps that. Is that a lot of people, how many of you have heard of intermittent fasting? I think almost everyone. So one of the biggest, I would say, secrets of maintaining a sustained energy in your fasting period is how you break the fast. So don't just go and randomly make poor food choices. So again, the glucose variability patch or the data will show you how you need to fuel even in your eating window. And like I said, I keep saying that this to all my clients, all my students, and even for my own life, that optimum efforts are much better than doing maximum efforts. And a lot of my own health and I would say fat loss goals have been achieved by sleeping more rather than working out more. So don't let fitness or the word workouts intimidate you. And the last bit is use it or lose it. How many of you all agree to this? Yes, because just like our body, when we don't use our muscles, okay, let's do one thing. Let's raise our hands up. And let's raise our hands down. Let's try one more time, lifting it up. Now just check for a second if your elbows are straight. Are your elbows straight? See if you can straighten them fully. Breathe, don't hold your breath. And now see if your arms or your biceps are next to your ears or not. Some of you pull them back, right? Okay, relax. So why did I make you do this? Because when you don't use your joints in their actual range of motion, and like we just saw that our mitochondria, our bodies are made to move. When we don't move it, the body thinks you don't need it. So it loses the capacity. Does that make sense? So just by doing simple things also, even without, you can go and find this online, but why are we talking about it here? Because what is personalized for you, that's what matters, or for your employees. And the last bit is, again, is the same like brain, right? If we are not utilizing or challenging ourselves with new activities, new movements, your brain is going to get slow, or it's going to just run in an automated program. So that's where movement also comes in. And lastly, to end it, we're going to do just one more exercise. Let's stand up. Okay, just try to not join your feet, just keep them slightly apart and just see if your toes are facing forward. And I'm just gonna say things like right hand, left leg, and you wanna try and lift it up. Okay, if I say left hand, left leg, you will lift the same thing. Does that make sense? Does everyone get what you're trying to do? Okay, let's try. Right leg. You can take the support right now, but breathe, yeah, relax. Left leg. I love it. The whole room is swaying and relax. One more time. Right leg. Left hand. Don't drop the leg. Relax. Left leg, right hand. Right hand, right leg. Relax. So again, by doing simple things like this also, your brain is firing. So that's it from me for now. Thank you so much.
This is why I love Urmi. She always gets everyone moving, gets them energized. And everyone's energy is dropping, not because of the food you ate, but because the host is so boring. So Urmi, remember that. She said so much of beautiful things, amazing things that she said. But there's a really interesting relationship. I was asking people, what do you think is the importance of our brain? Why do we have a brain? Anyone? Anyone? Yeah? Sorry? Command center, yeah? Why do we need a command center? Plan for growth? No? Interesting. So the only organisms on the planet that have brains or brain-like structures in them are organisms that have to locomote, move from one place to another. Everything that is stagnant in a single place does not have a brain. Okay. In fact, there's a species of amoeba found in the ocean that when it's microscopic at birth, it has a brain-like structure. And within 2 weeks, it attaches itself to a rock. And the first organism that dilutes itself or consumes itself is the brain. Right. So by this science, people have concluded, social scientists, neuroscientists have concluded that the reason we have a brain is because we need to move. So the way to keep your brain really healthy is to actually move. And she said something really fascinating, which is sleep is the #1 tool for recovery. And how many people sleep 7.5 hours in the room? Yeah. Okay. How many people sleep less than 6 hours? Okay. I asked this question. So many people, statistically, the average corporate person sleeps an hour and a half less than they should. Right. And because you don't work in a job where your body is required to judge your performance by a quantifiable metric like in sport, you don't understand the impact of that hour and a half less in there. Statistically, there's only one gene type that can sleep for less than 6 hours and function optimally. And that gene type is found in 0.7 of the population. So the probability of the 20 people in the room who put their hands up having that gene is highly, highly improbable. It's very, very fascinating. So we got something really, really exciting. I know it's going on for long, but just bear with me for about another 15 minutes. We should be done. But I'm going to bring back Marcus because we want to launch something really exciting. So ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together once again for
Who's got a biohack in their brain that they think they're going to do once they leave the room? Okay. We've got something. We've been working on something really hard over the last, more than a year actually. And before I tell you what it is, let's just go back in time a few years. On a similar stage somewhere in India, actually it was in Surat, 6 years ago, I was asked one sec. I was asked to, anyone recognize what that theme song was? Huh? No, no. Okay. Well, I'll save the song for a second. But I was asked to describe what I was excited about in the year 2030. What may the future of health potentially look like, right? This is pre-pandemic, 6 years ago. Here's a small clip of what I said, and then I'll explain something after that. Come on, next.
Technology, being the central tenet, is set to become more encompassing, much, much more smarter, and a whole load more personalized. Just think about the way Apple Siri has already transformed the way most of you use your mobile phones to search for things. The way Amazon's Alexa is slowly beginning to change the way we interact and engage with our homes. And what would a health concierge of the future look like? A digital, personalized health assistant. When we wake up, all of the biological outputs of our bodies are analyzed and assessed to give an indication of our internal biochemistry. Devices which are planted under our skins are sending this constant stream of data into this personalized health cloud. And as that information is analyzed, packets are sent to the various devices that we have in our lives. Our schedulers are instructed on exactly the right amount of exercise we should be doing. Our CPUs, culinary planning units, are told how much food and nutrition we should be consuming. When we're sick, our doctors are told, or our spouses are informed of what our health status is. The autonomous taxi service, which we may use for going to work, will be told to stop 2 blocks before we get there, all in the hope of incentivizing us to get out, walk, and earn extra health points. And the purpose of these points? They will calculate our insurance premiums. They may even be gatekeepers for access to certain services and facilities. And even if the future is not as somewhat dark or intrusive as I've just described, what I am certain of is that by the year 2030, 90% of all of your medical consultations will happen with a computer. You'll actually have that consultation with an artificially intelligent system which will ask you a series of questions and then recommend treatment.
So this is a journey that I've been on for a little while, and in a hope towards building what I thought was the future. And by the way, that theme song was Back to the Future. Any geeks or people old enough to remember that movie? So we thought it might be an appropriate song to play given the clip. But under the hood, Human Edge over the last 2 years or so have been thinking about now how do we bring all this intelligence of the experts that you've had some chance to listen to and many more who are going to follow later on, experts who are living around the world, to bring that intelligence into something that sits with you all the time to help you be the best version of yourself. And so we are really, really excited today to announce the launch of our first step in that direction. Everybody, welcome, and please meet Maito. So who is Maito? Mito is a intelligent system that gets to know you better over a period of time by understanding the health information that you feel you want to share with it, and then starts creating the optimal day for you. Prescriptions of biohacks, which every day keep changing based on your own unique goal, objective, outcome, and most importantly, your health status as well. Mito is going to be available on Android and on iOS from April 15th, but each of you today will have the opportunity to experience Mito in the Mito experience room behind here after the talk. So you can play around with the app and give us your feedback on there as well. How does Mito work? So every day when you wake up, Mito is presenting to you what your optimal day could look like. What are the biohacks that you should be doing across the 5 pillars? Whether it's enhancement in your recovery, whether it's making small, subtle shifts in your movement patterns, whether it's micronutrients or macronutrient suggestions, emotional aspects, and optimizing the environment as well. You have the opportunity to explore all the various biohacks that you have. If you could go down to the clock, please, Meghna. You have the opportunity to look at all the biohacks which are being suggested and see why they're being recommended for you. Can we... Yeah. So every day you wake up, you see the clock, it'll be suggesting what are the various biohacks that you can be doing based on that. And then if you can go down, the aspect of Mito has been designed so that anyone anywhere can use it. You don't have to have a wearable device. We have integrated our own proprietary lifestyle assessment that we've been building for the last few years. And that collects information, understands who you are, and then starts to make recommendations based on these 5 pillars, showing it to you in an easy to understand visualization, which you can track over a period of time as well. Now, some of you in the room have a wearable. Hands up who have a wearable. So what we've done is we have already integrated and partnered, if you can bring that up, with 6 of the most commonly used wearables around the world. Apple Watch, Oura Ring, Whoop Band, Fitbit, Garmin, and the continuous glucose monitoring device. So if you do have access to a wearable and you want to share that information with Mito, Mito will understand that information retrospectively. If you can bring that screen up, please. Retrospectively, can you go to the wearable piece? Yeah, the biomarker piece. Okay, you know what? Let's forget about looking at the screens. Mito will understand your information and then based on your fluctuations, then suggest what you should be doing. Because we understand that we're all different. I can't compare my heart rate to your heart rate. But what Mito will understand is what is your heart rate and how does it compare to your retrospective heart rate, and then try and understand why is your heart rate deviated today, and then make some biohack suggestions for you as well. The last hero aspect of Mito is the appreciation that health is individual, but it must never be a lonely experience. So each of us can invite our loved ones, our colleagues at work, or our family members to do biohacks with us along this journey as well. Not to compete with one another, but to hold ourselves accountable and to have fun with one another along the process. So please do stay behind, go to the Mito Experience Zone, play around with it on the device. If you'd like to be part of the beta testing cohort to get it firsthand, which we'll be releasing in the next few weeks, then reach out to any member of the Human Edge team. We'll take your details down and we'll make sure you have the link to play around with it as well. That's Mito. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Marcus. This has been almost a year and a half in progress. It looks simple, but there's a massive bioscience team that's really crunching all the evidence out there, scanning the sphere of every single thing that's evidence-based and presenting it in a way that's an actionable bite-sized piece of information that you can just take and use and see your health shift positively in the right direction. Also, we almost at the end. just one or two more talks we got going, but I want you to know that we've got some beautiful experiences. We've got something which is red light. Anyone has used red light therapy before? Hands up. Anyone tried that before? Great. So we got some red light therapy in here. In the cinema at the back, we've got a beautiful company called Neophony that's doing EEG monitoring. So they are quantifying your brainwave activity based on certain things so you can understand what the impact of meditation or a breathing exercise is on your own brain and how long you should be doing that before you get what is a structural change in your brain. Outside, we've got a beautiful market area with a few brands that have come. One brand is creating some beautiful nutraceuticals in for the gut. People are creating kombucha. We have some, I think, infrared clothing out there. All of this is there. So please take your time and experience all of that. Okay, our next speaker has come all the way from South Africa. She's someone who specializes in helping clients find their natural working rhythm outside of what is their self-imposed belief system. So most of us have this belief system that's very, very limiting and sabotaging the way we operate. Whether we know it or we don't know it, these exist in some shape and form. She's worked with Henley University. She does a lot of programs with the ICF. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Kirti Kah.
Awesome. So I'm going to talk about the value of psychological safety in building a strong corporate culture. This is a massive theme. In fact, there are two massive themes in that topic. The first is psychological safety, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about, especially if you're in the corporate environment. And the second is corporate culture. This topic speaks directly to the pillars of emotions and environment. But in truth, the experience of psychological safety impacts all 5 pillars. Yeah, would you agree? Okay. So when I thought about what could I share with you today in the small window of time that I have, I thought it's very important that we have a solid foundation to build psychological safety on. And to have a solid foundation, we need to understand what drives psychological safety. Because safety is really a mental construct. It's not something tangible. And it's in response to survival. Have you experienced danger ever? Who's experienced danger in the room? Okay. If you connect to that experience and you think of what was happening in your body, can you remember heart racing, sweating, a bit embarrassing, can't think straight? Okay, we can relate. Who's had an exceptionally embarrassing moment? Oh, yeah. Can you remember what happened in your body? Sweating, heart racing, can't think, face flushed. Everybody knows something's going on. Very similar to the first response, right? And that's because psychological threat and physical threats create the same stress response in our bodies. We go into fight, flight, freeze at some level. The adaptive response of the brain will prepare us for this fight, flight, freeze. Yeah, so the neuroscience is helping us to understand how the brain operates in this space. We're very clear on the physical threat and the response. But what we're starting to see is that the adaptive nature of the brain has a very real response to psychological threat. So if we are going to look at our environment, then we need to understand what is a psychological threat. Agreed? When we move into corporate space, the first thing we need to understand is that psychological threats are perceived. It's a belief system, as Shamil said. It's a mental construct. And in perceiving a threat, we will have a behavioral response. These are called stress responses. Clint, we were talking about it. The problem is often the stress responses become the way we normally operate. Adrenal fatigue, who's heard of adrenal fatigue? Consequence of operating on consistent stress levels. Receiving feedback, being asked a direct question, being put in the spotlight, somebody challenging your thought, your idea, is perceived as a psychological threat. And for each of us, these threats are different. This is a very personal thing. So can you see how difficult it is to manage it? Yeah? We need to first become aware of it. So being able to respond to psychological threats means we need to develop our self-awareness and the awareness of our environment. And this is very important. It's essential for leaders to understand why your team is not showing up. So some of these are just some of the threats. When we are in the presence of this threat, we go into coping behaviors. I call them stress responses, like avoiding failure, because we're too scared to get it wrong. So let's not operate in the space that I'm not comfortable with. And going back to the workplace is a typical example, because at home, we're in our comfort space. Yeah, work represents psychological threat environment. And this is very real. It's very real. So some of these behaviors, you can recognize them either in yourself or in the people around you. Withholding, playing small, not stepping up, not risking. These behaviors don't support a strong corporate culture, and they definitely don't support a growth mindset. The more we live in a culture where we are experiencing and seeing these behaviors, the less we are able to be successful, to access the potential that we have in our people, to innovate, to grow. Because growth in itself means we need to step into an area that we don't know and then make it known, right? So when we see these behaviors, they are like flags. Help me, support me, listen to me. They're flags for where we can bring psychological safety. What does that mean? It means, firstly, we become aware of it, and then we choose our response as leaders, as team members, as managers. We can do it for ourselves, becoming aware of our own internal stress state, what the threat is, how we're responding to it, and then choose something different. For example, how we deal with being challenged as a leader. Are we shutting down our people, or are we encouraging them to challenge us? Are we inviting people to share their ideas, their opinions? Or are we dismissive? And the more we develop our awareness, the more we'll be able to see how our response impacts other people and therefore impacts the culture. Making sense? Okay. The more we start being conscious and responding from the willingness to create a culture where people are allowed to make mistakes and grow from them, the more we step into that, the more we're able to access the value that comes out of such an environment. Yeah? So what is some of that? We build trust, people start sharing, people start volunteering. We build emotional resilience, people are engaged, they are inspired. They look forward to coming to work. Yeah? And then we've got deliberate, intentional sparring partners, people we can bounce ideas off, people we can talk to. And there's no separation then between the work environment and the home environment. They both are conducive to you being your best. And who doesn't want that? So the shift from this type of behavior, which results in a toxic environment, to the types of behaviors that promote a culture that allows people to be and to be their best, is through developing psychological safety as the bridge. And it's a process. I've just spoken about the very first step, which is recognizing when people are in a state of survival. And coaching can be the catalyst. Mito can be the catalyst because it builds awareness. Awareness around all the pillars. What is my erratic sleep informing in this moment? When we are in the toxic culture, our markers are going to go down. As we start shifting it through awareness, our markers are going to get better. All of them. Yeah? A loop. And finally, some of the value that we see on the level of the organizational culture is integrity, innovation, critical thinking, shifting to excellence, vision, buy-in, thought leadership. Show me a leader who doesn't want this. But this rests on shifting our awareness to include people. Yeah? We can't just be numbers oriented or success or task oriented. We do need to remember that behind everything is a human being, and that human being operates in a particular way, whether we like it or not, whether we're aware of it or not. But let's make that process conscious and hack the process to be the best version of ourselves. You with me? Excellent. Thank you.
She mentioned something called awareness. Awareness is so fundamentally important, and we don't understand how fleeting it is. Let's try something. I want to do a quick exercise before I get the next speaker on. Most of you have got a cell phone in your pocket, correct? Right. I want you to think of, you've got these screens with apps on them, correct? So I want you to think of the very, very first screen when you open your phone. What is the app? Just think, don't touch your phone. What is the app that is right at the bottom on the left-hand side? Last one on the left. Just think. You got it? Got an idea? Got a guess? Just guess, whatever it is. Right? Okay, so I'm going to give you guys 10 seconds. Take out your phone and just check. Okay, once you're done, close your phone, put it back in your pocket. Done. Okay, how many people were right? Okay, good. So we got about 40% of people were right. Okay, now can anyone tell me exactly what is the exact time right now? No one can. But you bypassed the massive clock, right, to go there. Why? You did that because the brain can only focus on one thing at a time. Okay. And when you want to create psychological safety, that has to become salient in your mind for you to be able to create that. There's a beautiful research paper done by Professor Lester Lubowski in 1976, where he studied 100,000 transcripts from patients and therapists. And he found that there's 6 things that are common amongst every single person on the planet. Every single person wants 6 things. They want to be understood, they want to be heard, they want to be seen, they want to be valued, they want to be respected, and they want to be treated fairly. And every single point of conflict arises from one of these 6 things missing. Now, why is it so difficult? Because this is not front and center in our mind, which is why we can't think about doing something which could be as simple as just asking a question like how you are. Okay. Now, next question. How many of you have taken an antibiotic in the last 6 months? Hands up. Interesting. Did you know that just taking one single antibiotic capsule can kill almost 50% of your gut bacteria? And that will take about 2 years for you to recultivate. Did you know that? Yeah, that's a fact. Our next speaker is someone very interesting. I met her when she was a professional tennis player. We worked a little bit, and then I've seen her entire journey grow. She's now one of India's leading sports scientists and sports nutritionists. She works with Olympians, with IPL teams. She's the founder of an organization called CORE. Really, truly one of the most remarkable people I've met and someone I have a lot of faith and trust in. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome my friend Krushmi Chadha to speak to you on gut microbiome.
Good morning, everyone. I've known him in my worst phase where I was sweaty, dirty on the court, and it's a pleasure to share this platform with all the experts here today. I'd first of all like to say I very often skip the whole word nutritionist when I'm introducing myself because there's a nutritionist everywhere in everyone's house. In mine, there's a grandmom and a mom who's a nutritionist. And the minute I say I'm a nutritionist, I get a lot of either freebie advice or questions, both of which I don't want to answer. And very often, nutrition is everywhere, so much information out there. So my job today is to actually give you information which is science-backed. That's what's really important because there's so much information. Second is, what is this human edge we're talking about when it comes to nutrition? Because nutrition is holistic in nature, there is so much that you can achieve just by doing something which is in your hand. So the first thing I learned when I played sport, and my coach always told me, use your strength as your advantage. In tennis, the point starts with a serve, which is my advantage. I dictate the point. So what is your dictating here when it comes to nutrition? Your gut health. It's in your hand. The stress that comes from outside when you work is not in your hands, but how you deal with it is. Another thing that you need to look at is it doesn't work by itself. So if you were to just eat good, healthy food, which a lot of people do. So when I take a food recall, they said, we have a healthy diet at home. We choose the best produce. We have all the fancy and the traditional things, superfoods that we call in our diet. But is it really helping you? Because you could be eating it at the wrong time. Or you're just not sleeping well and you still have a headache. So let's look at some of these symptoms. So I call it beat it before it beats you and get gut smart. You need to train smart, you need to eat smart, and you need to sleep smart. So how many of you actually feel this? Now, when I actually started my journey as an athlete, I think a lot of these went past me as my career progressed. And one of the things I promised myself when I became a nutritionist, I'm going to start healing myself first before I work with others. And over the years, the more number of people I meet, I realize that a lot of us have gone through this as well. And the numbers that you see amongst kids, adults, athletes having these symptoms is humongous. So inflammation, a lot of these issues start from inflammation in the body, whether it's your joints, it's your gut, or an inflammation of overall something that's coming from a disease or an autoimmune condition. You have to look at how do you nip it in the bud. We don't want to look at symptoms and the cure unless we understand the cause of it. So moving on to where is it coming from? So something called the gut microbiome. Now, what is it? Because there's these fancy words flying around, you need to understand what's in this gut. So you have bacteria, you have viruses, you have parasites, everything in balance within the gut. Now, some of it is symbiotic, which means the bacteria are good for your health. It helps you digest your food. It helps you absorb those nutrients and helps the functioning of the body versus maybe the viruses, or there are bad bacteria which are pathogenic. So they actually cause diseases in long term. What are we looking at? You want to improve the gut microbiome in a way where you have a good lifespan with less symptoms. How many of you all have a headache often? It doesn't have to be migraine, just a headache. So when I work with clients, when I ask them, do you have a headache? They said yes. First thing I ask them is, do you sleep well? No, I get about 5-6 hours of sleep. Okay, so we already have one thing that's causing the headache. The next thing I ask them is, do you hydrate well? Something as simple as water. It's freely available. I call it sasta mal because nobody thinks of it. We often don't realize we're not hydrating well because it's available at home. It's available at any place you go to. So water. So a lot of people are dehydrated, causing a headache. Then we come to stress levels. Then when I come to nutrition and I ask them, do you have sugar in your diet? A lot of people say no, because I don't eat any refined sugar at all. And we normally don't use it in our food that's cooked. And then I sit with the recall and then I get 2 cups of tea that happen with a stevia, which is an artificial sweetener. Remember, it'll still have an insulin response. Low calories, but still creates a sugar response in the body. What happens? I have 2 glucose biscuits. That's your 15 minutes of treadmill gone. Because 1 biscuit is 70 calories. You're killing yourself on the treadmill about 20 minutes, and that's your 2 biscuits. So a lot of us don't realize that hidden sugars still exist in our food. So what are these 5 elements, the verticals that we spoke of, where most of them come in for your gut health? So you have food quality, the kind of food you eat. Stick to local and seasonal, because that's what is best and it's best produced. Low shelf life, no packaged food. If you have a milk Tetra Pak, it will last you 6 months. If you have biscuits, it will last you 6 months. If you have fruit, 3 days in the refrigerator in Bombay weather. So lower shelf life, less packaged food, better food quality. Exercise, we've had so many experts talk about exercise already. Movement helps with blood flow. Movement helps with better functioning of the body. We have stress levels, which you can manage better. You have the environments that you live in, pollution, smoking, all of that affects your gut health. You have sleep and medication. So we just had Shamal give you the idea of 1 antibiotic and you're struggling with your gut for almost 2 years to bring back that balance. So how do you bring that balance back quickly? If you're looking at having antibiotics because you're unwell, the whole point is don't fall sick. Don't get that viral infection so that you're not going to end up having medications. We call it the forgotten organ. Now, it's not actually an organ, but we call it an organ because it does so much for the body, for the general functioning of the body, that it is an organ that's very, very important. So your gut, your core actually starts where the body functioning starts. So you have immunity because your immune response is what helps you have longevity. You have weight management. A lot of people are looking at fat loss, but if you have poor gut health, you're not having good absorption and digestion of your food. So no matter what you're putting in, you aren't going to have optimum results. Brain function. I think a lot of us, when we work, have a tendency to feel lethargic. And many of them blame it on the rice I ate in the afternoon and I'm feeling sleepy post-lunch. No, it's not the food you eat. It's often how your gut is functioning and how your food is getting absorbed. If you're looking at essential nutrients, there are multiple nutrients that come and are manufactured because of the gut flora you have. And we have your digestion. So all of this holistically works together. So, when people talk about you need to have good gut health, I'm hoping when you go back home today, you have some information at least of starting with that edge, which is in your hand, and how you can work around it. How to optimize your gut function. Now, there are 2 really quick tips that I'd like to share with you. This is a good starting point. Of course, we're individuals. Everybody has a different routine at home, whether it's nutrition, whether it's exercise, work routines. But this is a good starting point. So I told you eat seasonal. How many of you all like mangoes? It's coming up. How many of you all like mangoes? We often tell people don't have mangoes, it's high sugar. But mangoes also come with vitamin C, vitamin K. It's really good for your health, provided you don't do a mango juice or an amras with milk and sugar and bombard it with 5 mangoes in it. So 1 mango a day, not a problem. But what time do you eat that also matters. If you're having high release sugar foods at night, it's going to add to your fat. It's going to change the absorption. It's going to affect your glucose, which she mentioned about as well, your glucose monitoring. So good quality food, seasonal food, and a wide variety of foods. So don't stick to a military plan. I have people who do weight loss and say, you know what, I can eat the same thing 365 days. I don't think that's the best thing. Having a wide variety is equally important because you get a wide variety of nutrients from that. Last thing, timing of your food intake. So your glucose monitoring is very important because that affects, it's a ripple effect. Your insulin, which is a hormone, affects a lot of other hormones in the body, creating an imbalance. So the timing of what you eat is very important. How many of you all have fruits at night as dessert? Because you say it's better than having a piece of chocolate or having cake. So fruits are high sugar. Better to have it in the morning. You get your nutrients, you get your micronutrients from it. And how do you combine it? Have you done 3-legged race in school where you tie yourself with the next person? You will slow down the minute you're tied to somebody, apart from when you're running alone. When I add fruit and nuts, it slows down the release of nuts. So the combination of foods, the timing of food makes a big difference to your glucose levels, and hence affects the inflammation of the body, and hence affects the gut flora. Food intake along with pre and probiotic. Have you heard these names? Any confusion? I'm sure a lot of people don't know the difference between a prebiotic and a probiotic. So prebiotic is the food for the gut bacteria, whereas probiotic is actually introducing that gut bacteria in your body. So there are foods naturally available. You also see supplementation that's available. So when you go to a doctor and you've been given antibiotics, post your antibiotic course, they will give you a probiotic course to somehow get that balance back in your gut. Last thing, plant-based foods. Now, big debate because, suddenly there's a shift. How many of y'all have seen Game Changer? Correct. But I have this question asked, and when I work with cricketers, especially when you have the big names who've changed, I don't want to name any of the cricketers, but those who've turned vegan, does it really help? It does, but it's not about choosing one food or the other. So if you are a meat eater and you enjoy your meats, you don't have to be a vegan, but you have to increase the plant intake in your diet. So you can introduce a higher percentage of plant-based foods. I think I work with a lot of mind body. If somebody comes to me and I said, listen, stop everything you like eating. And we have had this discussion yesterday saying the minute you say avoid something, it actually affects you more. So the better thing to do is to add what's good for the body. So increase the intake of plant-based foods, which will help your gut flora as well. Coming to the last part and my favorite part, because I think as an athlete, I spend so much time of my life, a bigger chunk of my life, playing tennis. There are a few things that my coaches told me that stuck by me, and I think it's kind of helped me, whether it's work, whether it's how I function for myself, everything. One is one size doesn't fit all. So you have to be specific. I had my own training and playing strategy. No matter which player I was playing against, you have to be specific to what your daily routine is. You can't follow what's on the internet, or you can't follow if somebody else, you have a runner friend who said, listen, I'm taking BCAAs, you should take them too. You don't even know why you're using it. So it's very important to be specific. Use the data. I mean, the great part is now you have access to things like Mito, where you have your personalized data. Use that to create your own routine, your own nutrition plan, your fitness plan. You have to be consistent. I have people who want quick results, no problem. But you have to be consistent to get that result. And if you want to have the best result which stays with you, we all want long careers. We all want a great lifespan without a lot of issues. I mean, after COVID, definitely. So you need to be consistent. And the one thing my coach told me, practice doesn't make a man perfect. I'm sure all of you all have heard this. Perfect practice makes a man perfect. I could hit 1,000 forehands and hit it incorrectly. And I could do 10 and hit it the right way and get better muscle memory. And that perfect has to be your balance. That perfect has to be your perfect, what suits your system. So thank you very much. I hope you go home today and be your own nutritionist.
Don? Okay, yeah. Perfect practice makes perfect. Does anyone know how many repetitions it takes to transfer something from the conscious mind to the subconscious mind where it's completely automatic? Anyone? Not. It takes 3,000 perfect repetitions. So when an athlete practices for about an hour, hitting golf balls or hitting cricket balls, how many times do you think he's hitting that ball perfectly? If he hits it 1,000 times, how many times do you think he's hitting it perfectly? Perfectly. About 15% of the time. So that gives you an indication of the amount of repetitions that are needed to perfectly transfer skill from the conscious mind to the subconscious mind. And why do you want to do that? You want to do that because at the height of pressure, we cannot use any cognitive space to think about how to execute a skill. That's why it's so fundamentally important. But you said something so beautiful. At Human Edge, we do what's called a gut microbiome test, where we try to understand what that bacteria that everyone's been talking about is. And the reason we do that is because so many people seem to think that because I'm eating an avocado or because I'm eating a kale, I'm getting the benefits of it. That's not true. That is a false assumption to move forward with. Because you eat something healthy doesn't mean your body is absorbing it. You're not a byproduct of what you eat. You're a byproduct of what your body can digest. And this is fundamentally important. This is one thing that we should all really and truly understand. And there's a very, very beautiful research. It's called the $100 experiment that was done by Stanford, where they got a person to walk into the room and there's $100 left on the table. And the person on the other side of the table gets to decide how much they want to give to you. So that person decides that they want to give you $10. Now you have a choice. You can say, no, I'm not going to accept it. We should split this in half. Or you could say, yes, I'll take that $10. If you take the 10, he goes away with 90. If you reject it, both of you go away with nothing. And what was really interesting is when they ran this experiment, they gave these two cohorts different breakfasts that look exactly the same. One was carb-rich and the other was protein-rich. And they found that within 20 minutes of eating food, people that ate protein were more likely to take that $10 than people who ate carbohydrates. Right? And what was even powerful, leave the carb versus protein. What's really powerful in this entire narrative and this entire research is how short the duration is between what you put in your stomach and how you make decisions moving forward. That is what we need to be taking aware of. And this is why conscious decisioning is fundamentally important. Anyway, we've got to our very last speaker, who's an absolute rock star, very dear friend of mine. She is a best-selling author. She is a podcast host and the co-founder of Empathy Everywhere. Her book, which every one of you is going to get a copy of, it's called Softening the Edge, was a bestseller in USA, Canada, in the UAE, all before it even hit the shelves. She's got 15 years of experience in marketing, in coaching, and she's really one of the champions of empathetic leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together, make a big round of applause for my very, very dear friend, Mimi Nicholas.
Slots. Nobody fall asleep. You've got like 20 minutes to go, I promise. I'm not going to talk about you. I'm not going to talk about me. I'm going to talk about all of us. Because my passion and my specialism, as you heard briefly there, is in how we create empathy in our world and why we need empathy in our world. And you heard Marcus this morning talk about the role of empathy in health, of course, in the workplace. And you even saw the word on the screen when you saw the video of Maito earlier. So my passion is this, and this is why I'm here. I flew in from Malaysia to support the team, but this is why I get up every day. Because I believe that the more the world talks about empathy, the more empathy the world will have. And ladies and gentlemen, we need more empathy. We have never needed empathy more than we need it today. Now, it was Obama in 2006, before he became president, who stood up and he addressed his audience and he said, I know we're supposed to be talking about the federal deficit, but I think we should be talking about our empathy deficit. Now, us being very busy, preoccupied people, we've done nothing about this for nearly 16 years. And the issue today is we have an empathy deficit in our world. We have 30 years of declining empathy. Now, when I explain to you that empathy is an evolutionary skill set, human beings, all of us, we need this to survive. We need this to protect the future of humanity. And somebody asked me earlier before this, but isn't this about thriving versus surviving? And I said, absolutely not. We are pro-social. We need each other. This is why COVID was so difficult. We don't do very well when we're alone. Now, when I started talking about this and I got my book deal in late 2019, and little did we know what was to come, I got my book deal and I called my mother. I'm British. She's extremely British. And I said, Mum, you're never going to guess what? Someone's publishing my book. And she said, darling, that's wonderful, but who wants to read a book about empathy? I was like, well, thanks, Mum. But she was right. No one was talking about this, but fast forward to today, and if you Google this, which I hope you all do, it's a hugely trending conversation. And of course, Human Edge is playing a big role in bringing this conversation to businesses worldwide when we talk about our health. Because if we are disconnected, we cannot be our healthiest
best selves. So what is it? You all, I'm sure, have a definition, and if I had more than 9 minutes, I would ask you for some of them. But fundamentally, we're talking about perspective taking. This is not an emotion. This is a skill set. It is your skill set. It is our skill set to change the world, to reconnect the world. And when you work through all of the content you've seen today, which is about how to be your healthiest selves, we need each other in being those healthier selves. This is a competence. You can practice it, you can master it. And you heard earlier the phrase practice makes permanence. The last few words of my book are actually that existing in that space, it's not about practice makes perfect, it's about practice makes things permanent. Okay? We have to practice this skill set. It is impossible for all of you to create any level of engagement in the workplace sustainably, even if we're all healthy, without first understanding each other. If you don't ask people how they are, if you don't understand how they are you going to motivate them? Just a few weeks ago, a CEO in Delhi said to me, Mimi, I have a massive problem. My workplace, my staff, they're all leaving, which I know is something we all struggle with. And I keep giving them pay rises, and they keep leaving. So we went through a whole load of motivating factors that perhaps might work better. And to cut a long story short, he called me back a few months later. He said, Mimi, I've cracked it. I was like, well, great. What did you do? He said, we changed the coffee machine. And no jokes, that's it, right? And people were staying because they felt understood, right? Their leaders were hearing them. They were interested in them. Now, when you do work with Human Edge and you look at Mito, you've seen today some of the pillars we work across: physical, emotional, mental. This app, this business is building across the three, because without all three, we cannot be. Okay, we have to build all of these parts into our best selves, into workplaces that are sustainable and that start to stop the great resignation, or perhaps what is now the great re-engagement, especially when you're working remotely. There is no human that doesn't need to be understood. We've seen this in data from as young as 18 minutes old. We have to be seen and heard. That is a fundamental need. But equally, there is no human that won't feel better, perform better, and do better once that need is fulfilled. We have to be connected. It is absolutely fundamental to who we are. How will you ever use this app? How will you ever integrate this into your businesses if you don't first understand your people? You have to know where you're going. What's the vision? How are you taking them with you? If we don't listen, and most of my work today is in teaching listening, actually, how can you do any of these things? How can you be more curious? How can you use empathy as your data set? You're going to have so much data on Mito about personalization in the healthcare space. This practice is about understanding all of us. This is about social intelligence, communication, collaboration, engagement, motivation, and negotiation. I know when I'm in India how important it is to talk about negotiation, right? This is a skill set that will impact your bottom line. We are talking about balancing humanism with capitalism, which is, of course, what Human Edge is also built on, improving our people by improving our businesses. I'm going to have just a couple more slides before I end. But this piece of data, I just love it. It's from the Workplace Insider report. It's global. It's 6,000 people. 79% of people, so 80% of people say they will leave their industry, their role, and everything they have committed to in their career to find a more empathetic boss. Okay? Obviously, 2020, 2021, 2022 has impacted this. People are willing up to give everything simply to be seen and heard, for you to look them in the eye, listen to them, and be interested. Now, empathy is not about judgment, agreement, or action. You don't have to do, you just have to hear. This is what we're really talking about in this space. So really the question I want to leave you with, to think about, perhaps as you go home to your families, your children, your wives, your aunties, all of the people that you're going to share the weekend with, are you listening to understand, or are you listening to reply? Because most of the time, when you're listening to people in the room, you're thinking, yeah, but that timeline's not going to work. And I've got to tell them that, you know, Abdul isn't ready for that. And all these things, you're not listening. You're listening to yourself. Okay? We do this more and more. Actually, there's data to show that the closer we become to CEO, the less well we listen. The shift this year, as listening leadership goes mainstream, is to listen to understand. If you don't listen to understand them, you're listening to yourself and not to them. As I said, the difference between hearing and listening is the insight and the data you are taking from that. I promise you that this investment in listening is beneficial to you as well as them. And we also know from a neuroscience point of view, it is also rewarding. So you will feel better for empathizing with people as well. Fundamentally, we work, and this pillar of Human Edge's work is in social intelligence. That includes building relationships, engagement and trust, and of course, sustained health. No one is going to share their health and share their opinions if they don't first trust you. You need businesses that have trust embedded into your people if you're going to create the change for the future, the sustainable future that our business places need. As I said, this is my prediction. 2023 will be the year that listening leadership goes mainstream. This conversation has shifted. If you are not on the bus, you better get on it because it has left the station, particularly when we talk about generational gaps. Young people today will demand you to see them and to hear them. My very last thought is this is what I travel the world really helping people understand, is we're all more alike than we are different. The great thing with an app like Mito is you have your personalized data. You know how you can improve yourself with these biohacks to be the best version of you. But if we cannot connect as a society, if we cannot overcome the gaps that are segregating us with all of the isms in the world, racism, ageism, all of them, sexism, if we cannot come back together under this and recognize that our collective health as human beings lays in us recognizing that we are all more alike than we are different, then perhaps we're doomed before we even step out to make the change. So my last question today is this: are you listening? Will you listen? Please listen. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. I hope all you guys are listening to me. Are you listening? Because I have some very, very important things to say. Mimi said some beautiful stuff. We are all more alike, than we realize. And the only way to find that likeness is actually and truly to listen when we ask a question or when someone is truly speaking. That's how we're going to find it. That's the science of belonging, isn't it? To find that vulnerable thread that links every single one of us. And that's how we create that sort of science in belonging. Interestingly, when I asked you early on and I spoke about ChatGPT and asked, would you like to have an AI boss? Those people who did not want to have an AI boss was because they felt, how is that AI going to listen to me? That's what it came down to. When I have, no one's worried about their best day. They're worried about who they're going to speak to on their worst day. And that's the person. Is that person going to listen? So that was the one data point with why people said, no, we don't want it. Even though everything else stacked up in that favor, they didn't really want it. So I want to ask, I'm almost at the end. We are almost at the end. And at Human Edge, we talk, you've just heard about social science. We've heard about community. In our app, we have people coming together. Let me ask you, how many people want to move better this year? Good. How many people want to eat better this year? All right. How many people want to connect better this year? Okay. Now, think about the people you surround yourself with, the 4 or 5 people. Is there anyone in that ecosystem that represents what you want? Is there any role model in your ecosystem that represents that? So you don't have to answer that question, but that's the first thing that we need to think about with respect to social connection, is that if we want to aspire to something, there needs to be somebody in our ecosystem that represents that value, that represents that action, or represents that behavior, if we're going to stand any chance of bringing it back in or bringing it back home. This is why in the world of athletics, we talk about environment. We talk about bringing everybody together. Good people make people great. We enculture an environment around it because that's how we push everyone forward. How many people in the room do any breath work? Breathing? So I've studied breath work. I've done a lot. I've traveled the world looking at it. But in India, it's really, really powerful. When I go to the West, they talk about box breathing and they talk about 4-7-8 and 4x8. And even I use some of that language. But when you talk to a true yogi in India, right, the first breathing practice they teach you is what? What's right at the heart of this entire encyclopedia of breathing? Anyone knows? Huh? It's called Kapalbharti, correct? Yeah? How many people have done that? Kapalbharti. Almost everyone. Any yoga teacher you go, and when he's teaching you Kapalbharti, what's he teaching you? He's teaching you, correct? What is he saying? Forcefully exhale. Forcefully exhale. Isn't that how they teach it? I've yet to meet a yogic practitioner who's teaching this without this exact definition. No one's telling you anything about inhalation. Everyone's only talking about forcefully exhaling. And the reason why I love that practice is because that is a philosophy for how we should live. If we forcefully give, you don't have to worry about what comes back. Isn't it? And that is right at the core of the most powerful yogic breathing practice that's home in India. So the way to take everything that we've said and connect it together is to forcefully find your community of like-minded, like-hearted people and forcefully give. Because if we do that, we'll all move in the right direction. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of a beautiful 2-hour session. I hope you've learned something. Has everyone learned something new? Okay, so remember, we've got a wonderful goodie bag. All of these best-selling books from our authors, Marcus and Mimi, everybody's in that box. We've got a nice t-shirt. I want you to experience the Mito room. Have a look at the biohacks that are there. We've got a beautiful biohacking tree. Let us know what you want to write and what do you want to take on. The red lights in the cinema, like I said, the Neophony headset, go and test it out, do a little bit of breath work, see what's happening in your brain. You know, so you may get scared or you may be happy. Get out to the market. We've got some beautiful brands out there. But ladies and gentlemen, firstly, I want to thank everyone from our Human Edge team for putting this together, our speakers who have come from far and wide to talk and have taken out their time. And lastly, to you for being present and listening, most importantly. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. My name is Shyam Vobji. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you. And yes, perfect. And we also have lunch, which will be served. So you can interact, talk to the speakers. They're all around, meet the team, experience stuff for